The city of Uluba moved differently in the late nights. By day it was dust and commerce, by evening it was noise and sweat, but at night it was hunger dressed in neon. Amara had begun to feel it pressing in on her body like an invisible hand, the way the air thickened with things unspoken, the way her footsteps always seemed to echo too loudly as she walked home from the cafe. The cracked mirror no longer startled her. It had become a ritual, that quiet moment before collapsing into restless sleep, studying the hardened reflection that no longer flinched. Uluba had a way of stripping away softness, of chiseling the contours of a person until only necessity remained. And necessity had no room for innocence. The cafe itself was changing around her. The owner stayed longer into the night, muttering about debts, counting coins that never seemed enough. The regulars shifted, the mothers and students gave way to men with pressed collars and shoes that shone too brightly in a place so dim. They stayed later, ordered more, spoke in half-jokes and low voices, and always their eyes returned to Amara. She had learned how to move carefully, not too quickly, not too slowly. She knew the rhythm of her steps mattered, that her silence carried weight. She poured tea with a steady hand, carried plates with quiet precision, and ignored the feeling of being measured by people who never said what they were really thinking. One night, as she cleared a table, a folded piece of paper lay waiting beneath an empty glass. She knew it was meant for her, no one else touched that table. She slid it quickly into her pocket without reading it, her heart pounding in her throat as she forced her face to remain blank. Later, alone in her room, she unfolded it. The handwriting was neat, too neat. Just an address and a time. Nothing more. She sat with it for a long time, staring at the paper, her mind pulling between fear and curiosity. The address was close to the center of Uluba, far from the cafe, far from the life she knew. She burned the note the next morning, yet she memorized the address before the flame consumed it. Uluba at night was not meant for wandering, but Amara walked. She walked because she had no answers, because the cracked ceiling of her room gave none, because the cafe's walls whispered only repetition. The streets carried their own kind of sermon, girls leaning against walls, their eyes tired and painted, men moving with heavy shoulders, chasing something they would never name, music spilling from bars like a drug in the air. She walked through it all like a ghost, her blouse clinging to her in the humidity, her shoes catching in the cracks of the uneven pavement. Everywhere she looked, the city reflected pieces of her, fragments of futures, warnings disguised as strangers. Back at her building, the silence was worse. Her neighbor, the woman who once hummed lullabies to a child that cried all night, no longer made a sound. The door remained closed, and Amara realized with a chill that she had not had the baby in weeks. When she asked another tenant, the woman only shrugged and avoided her eyes. Uluba swallowed stories whole, and silence was its graveyard. Days blurred. Amara's steps at the cafe grew slower, heavier. The laughter of students no longer touched her. The tired mothers became mirrors she avoided. And the men still watched her, but now she felt something different in their gaze. They were no longer studying her as a possibility. They looked at her as if she was already theirs to define, as though her resistance was just a pause before inevitability. She caught her reflection in the cafe's window one evening. The neon painted her face in cold colors, and for the first time she realized she didn't recognize the girl who had first arrived in Uluba with a suitcase and small dreams. One night, closing the cafe later than usual, she found herself alone. The city outside was quiet in a dangerous way. She wiped down the last table, stacked chairs, and turned off the lights, her body moving automatically. But as she locked the door, she saw them, the two men, standing across the street, their shapes half swallowed by the shadow. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Their presence was enough. Her body stiffened, every instinct screaming at her, but she walked quickly past them, refusing to meet their eyes. They did not follow. Not that night. But she knew, with certainty, that Uluba was not done with her. In her room, she sat again before the cracked mirror, her breath unsteady. She whispered to herself, words no one else could hear, words that barely formed into sentences. They were not promises, not prayers, but declarations of survival. The mirror reflected them back without mercy. Outside, Uluba pulsed in neon and shadow, waiting. And Amara understood that the city was no longer a place she lived in, it had become something alive, something that had her name in its mouth.